John, people get almost as pissed when there's no John Cullen Investigates as they do when Charles is not on, because you were a little bit under the weather last week. How you doing tonight?
Yeah, I was sick last week, surprisingly. First time I've had to take a sick day since you and I returned from Thailand together. So I did get sick when you and I were together in Vegas. I came down with norovirus.
That was like a flash sickness, one of the craziest things I ever saw.
But
you had like one slice of pizza, and I ate the rest of the pizza, and you got sick. It didn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah, it was already in me. So when for those of you who don't know the backstory, Jason and I went to Vegas, and we were getting ready to go shooting out in the desert. And on the way out there, I got violently ill to the point that Jason had to drive back.
Yeah.
And we called it a day.
In your car.
Yeah. And I spent the rest of the day in the bed, and took about 24 hours to recover. And I think we went to the Hoover Dam or something, the next day or something like that. But
that was such a good show, by the way.
Yeah, that was awesome. Yeah, we did a lot of crazy stuff. Those of you who are not patrons, you're missing this stuff. The stuff that we do, these road trips, we've been to the Hoover Dam, we went to Barringer Crater, we walk around in Las Vegas, and we went to the fuel tanks and up and down Vegas Boulevard. That's on the patron-only portion. Like, if you're not a member over at subscribestar.com, I am John Cullen, or patreon.com, I am John Cullen, you're not really getting to see the stuff that Jason and I put the money into. I mean, when we go on the road, this is where, this costs us money to go do this. We went out to Lake Mead and did a report on Lake Mead and how the lake had basically disappeared. And a year later, the problem appears to be solved.
How did they do that, by the way?
I'm saving that for another show. I can't reveal all of our secrets in one show, right? So we'll have to reveal that later. But the problem appears to be solved. But this show, I'm very excited, right? I've got the book coming out. So the upcoming book, everybody's talking about the upcoming book. And I want to talk to everybody about the thumbnail, because that's exciting. So
do people know about this book? Who wrote this?
Oh, I've been talking about the book for a long time, and at first I thought that it really centered around my relationship with Laura Ingraham, but then I realized nobody really cares about her. So it's a much bigger story than that. And if you go to the next slide, you'll see some of the cover art I've been working on. So here you can get a sense of the new book, the title of which is Bats.
It's dressed as a chicken, or actually it's a chicken dressed as a bat.
Imagine that. So that's exciting.
I like that. So, did you do that with AI, John? That's great.
Somebody did this with AI and sent it to me and said, we thought you'd like this. And I was like, this is awesome. So we're working with different ideas, different concepts. So clearly we've got lots of different stories going on here. We got stories about bats. We got stories about chickens. And the thumbnail for tonight's show is kind of the setup of something that's been happening over the course of the last 2 weeks while I was sick. So why don't you tell everybody a little bit about the thumbnail? Because this is a special one. You don't often appear in the thumbnail.
That's true, actually.
And, yeah. So this is an exciting thumbnail. Tell everybody a little bit about what do we got going on here?
Well, you are going to tell us actually fully about what's going on with Adam Curry. I just happened to catch a bit on Twitter. If people are following at I_am_John Cullen, John's got a lot of stuff going on there on Twitter. And I noticed that you were interacting with Adam Curry, who is a very interesting guy. I mean, I never really knew a lot about Adam Curry. I used to see him on TV every day when I was a kid because he was one of the original MTV video jockeys, and he started something called the Headbangers Ball. He's really kind of like a music legend, actually, because a music media legend. He's been like a reporter, and he got into the internet very early. He's an internet pioneer, and he's done a lot of stuff with podcasting and broadcasting on the internet. Oops, I'm covering his face right now. We don't want to do that. But he's an intriguing guy, and also he was talking to Joe Rogan about his hearing loss and how he's got some sort of, hearing aid that is doing something with artificial intelligence, where he said that in certain respects it gives him superhuman hearing, that he can hear certain things that he couldn't hear with his regular ears. But he's been communicating.
Is that the other
with
guy? Is that the other guy in the band? Is that Joe Rogan next to me? Is that who that is?
No, you know what? That's just a fake AI. I didn't want to use the image of the original guy, so I just said, give me a face.
You know what's hysterical? You sent me the thumbnail to put, so I put the thumbnail up, and I'm like, who the hell is this guy? Who let him in the band? And I'm like, I can't wait to ask Jason, who the hell is this guy? How's he with the band? Because that's kind of like one of the funny things about is like, who's this guy? What's he doing with the band? Like, who let him in the dressing room? Who's this guy? Well, let's go to the next shot, because I want to tell people who these guys really are, because actually, I'm big fans of all these real guys in real life. So yes, that's Adam Curry out to the right. But if you go to the next slide, the actual band Poison, there's an interesting backstory here that I don't know if people know this about Poison. So Bret Michaels, a lot of people know Bret Michaels. He's been on reality TV shows and all that kind of stuff.
He's friends with Trump, isn't he? He won The Apprentice, I think.
He won The Apprentice. So people know Bret Michaels, but I want to talk to you guys about the rest of the guys in the band. So start from the far left. That's Bobby Dahl. Okay, so Bobby Dahl plays bass for Poison. And then the guy next to Bobby Dahl is CC DeVille.
Oh, yeah, right. Pick up that guitar and talk to me. Whoops.
And then the guy all the way to the right is Ricky Rocket. So you got Ricky Rocket, CC DeVille, Bobby Dahl, and Bret Michaels. All right. And that's Poison. Now, what most people don't know about Poison is that CC DeVille is a hell of a guitar player.
Yeah.
And in the world of guitar players, he's like a guitar player's guitar player. And I'm going to tell you guys a story that you may not know about him. He auditioned for the band. Now, the band is from Mechanicsburg, Pennsylvania. They go out to the Sunset Strip in the early 80s. I think it was like 83 or something. And they realized that the music scene in New York is dead. CBGB's, Max's Kansas City, it's all dead. It's over. So these guys go to LA, and it's the smart move. And when they get to LA, they start auditioning for new guitar players, because their guitar player is like going to go have a wife and a baby and have a real life. So they need a new guitar player. Guess who they audition before CC DeVille? And they end up going to CC DeVille. Slash.
Wow.
Slash.
I was going to say, it's not going to be Steve Vai. He's East Coast.
So Slash auditions for Poison, and they liked Slash better. CC DeVille is CC DeVille is the David Lee Roth of guitar. He's wild. He's outrageous. He's loud, and he's brash. And Slash is much more chill and more bluesy. But CC DeVille's style matched their writing, and they don't like each other. So they start the band out, and Bobby Dahl hates CC DeVille. They don't like each other at all. Oh, yeah. But the videos that these guys did were a riot. Talk Dirty to Me, and, some great stuff. So maybe we'll play some with the patrons. So that's the real band. Ricky Rocket, Bobby Dahl, CC DeVille, and Bret Michaels, Poison. And in the thumbnail, you've got you, me, and Adam Curry, and I couldn't figure out who this mystery guy was. I'm like, who is this guy with the band?
It's just an insert.
That's hysterical to me. That is so funny. All right, let's jump ahead. We got a bunch of slides. Before we go to the patron-only portion, here's what we're going to do. When we go to the patron-only portion, we're going to break down Adam Curry describing something to John C. Dvorak. So they do a podcast.
He heard from you, something he heard from you, right?
Right. And the reason we're going to do this is because, have you ever heard that song by Dua Lipa? A very popular song. It's a very popular song. She didn't write the song. And the original version of the song is terrible. It's horrible. No, it's another one. It's one of her first hits. And it's like the original version is by this girl named Paws or Kitty Paws or something. And the original version's horrible. And Dua Lipa's version is great. And so I'm thinking, well, let's listen to Adam Curry's version of the story. It's probably a hell of a lot better than mine. He's actually good at telling stories. He's a professional. Let's hear his version of what he thinks this looks like, because I have no pride. What the hell do I care? Like, well, I'd love to hear, William Shatner tell the story. It would be hysterical.
That
Right?
would be
Listen to
funny,
Shatner tell
actually.
it.
Shatner is
Right?
great.
Exactly.
But
Exactly.
you don't want to look at Dua Lipa.
Well, no, I love looking. You can, in fact, I'll kill my camera. You put Dua Lipa
No,
up
no,
there.
no, that's fine.
Yeah,
We'll go back to
I
you.
think it's good. No, I think it's good for the show. All right, so we've got a public service announcement though on the next slide that is very important, having to do with chickens.
Put the camera back.
All right. So we've got to go back to the chickens. This is public service announcement in England. The Brits are warned to stay at least 2 meters away.
Ooh.
That's
Wow.
not 6 feet. This is not 6 feet. This is 2 meters, right? It's a little further. So that means this is maybe a little bit more serious. So you guys want to take this seriously. 2 meters is more than 6 feet.
Aren't you automatically about 1.5 meters away from any chicken since it's down on the ground?
Well, that depends. I don't know. How tall are you? What if you're only 4 foot something tall and you're even closer? I don't know. These are the dilemmas we really have to consider strongly. Let's go to the next slide, because the next slide's a fun slide. This is this day in history. This is where we were on this day 4 years ago. So on this day 4 years ago, New York had 114 people dead. And we'll take a closer look at that. In fact, I published a video 4 years ago today. So on this day, March 22nd, 2020, I published this video on YouTube. Now, these are no longer there. All of my 2020 content, I took them down. I did a World War Z cut off the hand thing. I was afraid they were going to take the whole channel down. So I took my entire body of 2020 content off of the YouTube channel.
But doesn't that not stop them from striking it if they want to? They kind of do whatever they want.
Well, that has happened. I have gotten strikes for videos that aren't there anymore. But, again, who's splitting the hairs? Come on. Yeah, let's not split hairs. Just because the video's not there, you still should be able to get punished for it. Yeah. But these videos are long gone. They're not on the channel. But this is what I was publishing 4 years ago today. So on this day, I was looking at the map and I was saying, hey, Governor Newsom, you've got a hell of a smile, but it does appear that you've got more people dead in California than India and Mexico combined. Those are 2 pretty big countries.
Yeah.
How do you have more dead than India and Mexico? And to back it up, you go to the next slide, because, I can't just make claims that aren't backed up, right? So there's Mexico. And on this day, 4 years ago, there were 2 people dead. 2, correct, 2, right? So this is so simple. We could teach this in elementary school. Go to the next slide, and you'll see India, and even the kids can play along. Kids, 4. Everybody knows 4, right? This is like Sesame Street.
Yeah, today's show is sponsored by the number 4.
The number 4 in the country, India. So India only has 4 dead on this day in 2020. And then if you wanted to go to the next slide, this is just to rub his face in it, right? Because he eats at the French Laundry and we don't. We can't afford to eat there. But Russia had 1 dead. All right, so on this day in 2020, there's 1 person dead in Russia. There's 4 people dead in India. There's 2 people dead in Mexico. And there's 24 dead in California. How the hell does Gavin Newsom have more dead than Russia, Mexico, and India already? Already. How do you do this? The virus started in China. How do you have more dead in California than Russia? Russia's next to China. Hello? India. Right? India's kind of near China, right? Yeah. And Mexico.
Aren't we going to get yelled at by YouTube for even talking about this on here?
No, because it's Johns Hopkins since 4 years ago, so nobody cares anymore. And the numbers are like 4, 2, and 1. And so it's true, right?
You're not allowed to talk about the number 1.
Well, that's racist. So
yes, exactly. It's racist against other numbers.
Exactly. So again, I'm an equal opportunity offender. So that was the kind of stuff I was publishing back then. So the net of this is that Adam Curry happens upon a podcast where I was a guest on Tommy's podcast with Dr. Dave Collum and Dr. Scott Jensen. You've met Dr. Scott Jensen personally, right? You went out to Minnesota, met with the guy, and he's been a guest on my show. And he was one of the early people who sat through my charts and charts and charts of influenza and said, you're right. We kind of stopped testing for influenza. And Scott Jensen's famous because he's the one who said, we're getting reimbursed for this, we're getting reimbursed for that, if it's this, if it's that. And so he became famous for that reason. He runs for governor in Minnesota. I do a show with him, Dr. Dave Collin from Cornell, and I'm explaining the mea culpa. Basically, if you go back to my slide deck, it's important that people understand that I was explaining to everybody that I was wrong because I already met with Scott Jensen and I already met with Dave Collin. And when I met with them, it was before we saw all this new stuff. And so I felt like I owed these guys a bit of an apology. And I did a couple episodes on Tommy's podcast where I talked about this other stuff before as well. So I wanted to do the mea culpa. So jump ahead a slide in my deck. If you jump ahead to the mea culpa slide.
We don't want to peruse the CIA agents who Tommy frequently has on here?
He was talking about that the other day too. That he's got people
Claire
like that.
Lopez and this guy who was the Brooklyn District Attorney when Valerie Caproni was in the Organized Crime Division. This guy is very involved with the FBI. I don't trust everybody. Tommy at all.
Well, it's not about trusting anybody. So
look at these guests. They're coming right out of think tanks. Why is every person he interviews from the CIA?
So that's what I said on the show live.
So I said that on the show with him live. I was just on with him the other day with Amy. And I said to him, Tommy, I'm afraid that the people who are coming on your show work for the GEC and they're being paid by the government to spread this, this distraction story stuff, this other stuff, because this story we're talking about here appears to be kind of a bigger problem to me. That's just my opinion. So the mea culpa was that for 3.5 years, I thought it was this reconstructed 1918 Jeffrey Taubenberger Breivik mission H1N1, right? We knew you could order it and all this other stuff. And what we've learned over the course of the last 3 or 4 months was this new stuff. We learned 3 new things. So you can hop ahead 2 slides. We learned 3 new things, right? And the 3 new things we learned, first of all, so the first one was January 10th, the first person died. And we're like, January 10th? First person died? Yeah. And we're watching the video from the WHO, from the United Nations in Geneva, telling us first guy dies January 10th. Huh. Okay, what the hell was Peter Daszak so worried about back in December, a week and a half, 2 weeks earlier? Why was he concerned if nobody had died yet? Okay, so jump ahead. You'll see the slide from Peter Daszak. And so he's notifying ProMed December 30th, 2019, but nobody's dead. So again, I was just kind of curious, like, okay, well, there must have been a really bad kind of pneumonia. Like, what the hell's going on with this pneumonia that he's that concerned even though nobody's died yet? Then we find out, if you hop ahead to the next slide, that Trump signed this Moderna deal January 13th. And we were like, huh? But we had one guy dead. This is really, we should do this? Okay, all right. So we signed a Moderna deal January 13th with one guy dead. And then we see this supercut video of Trump talking about the Spanish flu, 1917 Spanish flu. And Adam Curry latches onto that. And he says, wait a second. We've been trying to figure this out. We've been wondering, what the hell is Trump talking about? 1917. And so when he sees the thing I'm doing with Dave Collum and Scott Jensen talking about it, he listens to it. So when we go to the patron-only portion, you guys, Jason, and the audience are going to hear Adam Curry explain it to John Dvorak and we're going to listen to his explanation. And I want to hear your take on it. I want to hear Jason's take. I want to get the feedback from the live chat from the patrons, and hear, what do you guys think when you hear Adam Curry describe this? Is this something that Joe Rogan could understand? Is this something that Tucker Carlson could understand? Is this something that Rusty Rockets would understand, or Patrick Bet-David would understand? Or is this still over their head? Like, in other words, is Adam Curry being way too technical in a manner that Patrick David couldn't possibly comprehend this yet? So we're going to explore that. We're going to take a look at it, and we'll hear it in his words, and you'll hear John Dvorak and how he's responding to it. And it's only like 5 or 7 minutes or something. So it's not like we're spending an hour and a half. We're going to just break it down. It's about 7 minutes long, and I'll point you guys to the Adam Curry podcast. This is the No Agenda podcast with John C. Dvorak that he does regularly. And I'll point you guys to it. And it's about 55 minutes into his podcast. So that's why we've got this thing queued up for the patrons and all that.
Now, wait a minute, though. So is this him, or which is Adam Curry?
Yeah. That is his podcast.
Oh, yeah. I'm following it. Right. I thought he had some unusual Twitter handle, but okay, there we go. Curry.com, and that's his podcast.
Yeah. So he catches it, he comments on it. And that's sort of that's kind of the reason, why do I go on these other, Coffee and a Mic with Mike Ferris and some of these other podcasts? Because I guess different people watch different stuff. And next thing you know, Adam Curry's watching that, or somebody sends him that. And, like, again, I met Dave Cullen through I think it was through Coffee and a Mic. And some people never invite me back. That's also interesting, right? So some people have me on their show and never invite me back. Like, that's it. Like, they see some of this stuff and they're like, okay, that's it. With him, not coming back. So interesting, though, simply that I don't know. It's just like a different channel, and people get to hear it. And, so we'll see what we think of Adam Curry's take on this when we go to the patron only portion. So the discussion has a lot to do with this other development that started long before COVID. And this is coming from a different organization at the United Nations than the WHO. And I find that kind of comforting, to tell you the truth. In other words, this is not Dr. Tedros's organization. This is not Margaret Chan. This is the Food and Agricultural Organization at the United Nations, a sister organization.
And is this the guy? Is that the guy who went to Event 201 or no?
No. This is the guy who's the head of the Food and Agricultural Organization at the United Nations back in 2013. Event 201 was 2019.
Well, this guy's Korean, though, not Chinese.
Yeah, correct.
All right.
Right. He's with the United Nations. He's just reporting what's happening in China, so he just happens to be an Asian guy. Yeah, just happens to be an Asian guy. So he's telling you, hey, there's a serious problem over here in China, and it's H7N9, and it's in the poultry, and we got it over here, and next thing you know, they find a bunch of pigs floating down the river. Imagine that. Imagine how, what a sight that must be one morning when you're like, hey, Martha, oh, that's a bunch of pigs floating down the Yangtze. Like, what is that? Yeah, a bunch of dead pigs floating down the Yangtze River. So that had to be a fun morning. Somebody had to fish them out. So this outbreak is taking place, and the lovely and talented Kayleigh McEnany, we'll go back up a slide or two, Kayleigh McEnany seems somewhat concerned about it. Yet she didn't join the administration until April of 2020. So you would think all the stuff in her hands would say COVID or SARS-CoV-2 something, but it doesn't. It's all about this other thing with the chickens. So maybe Kayleigh wasn't paying a lot of attention to COVID for, I don't know, maybe she was on like the remedial program because she just joined. So maybe they were like, well, first you need to study the things that happened many years ago, and you'll catch up, and in about a year we'll talk with you about COVID. How is she carrying all this stuff? And then none of this says COVID. None of it says COVID. And not only does none of it say COVID, nobody seems to think that's important. Isn't that weird?
Yeah. So now, John, we're just about out of time here on our introductory segment, and we got to make our way here over to the subscriber only.
Oh, all right. Well, the subscribers are going to get to see the video clip of Donald Trump, Megyn Kelly, and Megyn Kelly's legs all in the same shot. Now, that is a shot. So you got Megyn Kelly's legs, and Donald Trump all in the same shot. And we're going to hear Donald Trump talk to Megyn Kelly about dust that the Chinese sent over here. And he's going to describe the dust.
That's going to perk up Hunter Biden.
Dude, I feel like we're watching charades. I feel like he's going, Jason, look, 1917 Spanish flu. Jason, look, 1917 Spanish flu. Dust. He's trying to tell us. And everybody was ridiculing him.
You're a little bit like my mom in that when I tell her I've got to go, that starts a whole other segment of the conversation. But we're going to continue this.
I love your mom. I love your mom.
You've never met her. We're going to continue this on subscribestar.com/IamJohnCullen, patreon.com/IamJohnCullen, odyssey.com/@crowdsource the truth. Fantastic way to sponsor the show, and it's the most economical way to do it. crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com and subscribestar.com and patreon.com/crowdsource the truth. We'll be right back. We got a lot to discuss. Welcome to all of our Poison fans. Thanks for joining us, and we'll be